Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplace.com. Today we're going to be talking about this Will Smith reaction to a comment from Chris Rock about her hair loss. So, interestingly enough, this one little joke seemed to, cascade into a big fucking deal where, Will Smith literally interrupted the entire show, walked on stage, and smacked the shit out of him. So you're about to see the joke in real time. We're going to kind of get into her condition and whatnot, because it's like people are probably thinking like, what, first of all, what the fuck even happened? And then in addition to that, like, what, does she have cancer? Like, what is like the issue here, and why was it such a monumental, like, big deal that it made Will Smith literally like lose his fucking mind? Here we go.
You know who's got the hardest job tonight? Javier Bardem and his wife are both nominated. Now, if she loses, he can't win. He is praying that Will Smith wins. Like, please, Lord. Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
So it seems like at first he's actually, I don't know, like, seems okay with the joke, and she's quite unimpressed. It turns out she actually has alopecia areata, which we're going to get into the science behind that shortly. But basically, she can't control the hair loss. However, it's not like men can control androgenic alopecia either. Nor alopecia areata, you could argue, is potentially just as unmanageable, to be honest, or as manageable in a spectrum. And I'll kind of explain why when we get into the pharmacology a bit later and the science a little bit. But basically, this is a condition which she has delved into in interviews recently about why she has to, like, shave her head. But anyway, let's continue. He seems pretty chill with it, and she's not impressed.
That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard.
So he's about to smack the fuck out of him. And if you haven't seen G.I. Jane, by the way, this is G.I. Joe, the, most recent one, or one of them. And coincidentally, we have two of the most alpha hoss bald dudes in fucking Hollywood in it. We got Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Bruce goddamn Willis. These are the two guys everyone says, just be, being going bald is fine. Why? Because Bruce Willis, Jason Statham, and The fucking Rock. Those are the fucking holy trinity of bald men. This is G.I. Jane. I think this is Demi Moore, and she played, I haven't even watched the movie, but she shaved her head for the movie, and that's where the joke came from, if you're wondering what he meant by G.I. Jane. So anyways, he's basically like, what? That was a funny joke. And then Will Smith comes up.
I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
So at first, people were like, is this a joke? Is this part of, like, is this a skit? And then you can hear his mic has been muted. And he says, keep my wife's name out of your fucking mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yes.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay? Okay.
It's like, where do you go from here, bro? Fuck.
That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay.
Boom. So obviously his wife was pretty insulted by it. Presumably Will saw her reaction and then kind of like fed off of that and, went to go defend her essentially. Because at first he didn't seem to, I don't know, like, was he just laughing because, like, to play along with it? And then he saw how, not happy she was with it and then reacted, or was he going to do this anyway? I don't know, kind of interesting. But, like, at first she seemed like she's entirely unimpressed and he's kind of just chilling.
See it, all right?
Like, he didn't even look at her for the first like few seconds, and she's just like rolling her eyes and pissed. And then he went up to receive an award, and then, you know, people are all wondering, is he going to address the topic? And you know, kind of awkward, I guess, because of just what happened. And he gets pretty emotional talking about like, you know, context and his award and whatnot. And at the end, he mentions how Denzel Washington presumably said something about like, don't, you know, be careful, like don't fuck up because, you know, you're angry right now, just be careful. He says that at the end of his speech.
And what I loved, thank you, D. Denzel said to me a few minutes ago, he said, at your highest moment, be careful, that's when the devil comes for you.
So, I don't know, pretty articulate way to say like, don't fuck up, basically, I guess. But anyways, getting into the whole G.I. Jane comment and Jada Pinkett Smith. So she actually went into multiple interviews talking about it recently, and we're going to get into that now.
Pinkett Smith shows the world she has no shame with a bald head.
At this point, I can only laugh. And y'all know I've been struggling with alopecia.
In a candid Instagram video, the actress and wife of Will Smith shows how the hair loss condition, alopecia, has left her with a big scar on her scalp.
Just all of a sudden one day, look at this line right here. Look at that. Look at that.
So this is not a scar. This is actually localized. Well, I don't think it is. It's, if she just says it showed up, it was localized hair loss caused by her immune system essentially attacking itself. That's what alopecia areata is. It is not like she just had like a chunk of her head like fall out. Like these are the hair follicles being attacked by her immune system that basically assumes that there is some sort of like invader in her circulatory system that is or, you know, intestinal like permeability and whatnot. If you have leaky gut, this is like one of the most common causes of autoimmune disease, and your body has leaked toxins into its system, and it causes a autoimmune reaction where your body thinks that it is being like invaded by like foreign like toxic matter and needs to defend itself, and it might otherwise target certain organs that end up getting like collateral damage essentially when your immune system's all flared up. So like your body, when your immune system is flaring like crazy, you can have the manifestation of eczema, you can have the manifestation of alopecia, you can have the manifestation of a lot of different things that are like irritable bowel syndrome. Like there's a lot of things that crop up as a result of autoimmune disease, and oftentimes these are, you know, environmental induced. Diet induced is probably one of the main things. Like if you're ingesting foods that your body simply can't tolerate, and everyone differs, like people with celiac, like there are a bunch of different foods that some people just like really can't assimilate and deal with, and your body almost like treats those like foreign invaders, and your immune system flares up, and then it causes collateral damage of different organs. There's like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where your body, literally the immune system is flaring to a point where it's attacking your thyroid and thinks it's, you know, is literally damaging it until it's like essentially degraded into uselessness. Hair follicles, they are organ systems, unlike what a lot of people think. These are literally living hair. Each hair follicle is its own like organ essentially. So your body can attack those just the same, and it can result in a manifestation of hair loss if it otherwise has, you know, the collateral damage of an autoimmune flare happening on a chronic basis. So this could be, I'll let her give more insight because she has actually tried some stuff.
So it just showed up like that.
She first revealed her hair loss struggles on her Red Table talk show.
I've been getting a lot of questions about why I've been wearing this turban. Yeah. Well, I've been having issues with hair loss.
She even showed herself getting a buzz cut. Now she's completely bald. Pinkett Smith says she's talking about the scar to avoid surgery rumors.
This is going to be a little bit more difficult for me to hide. So I thought I'd just share it so y'all not asking any questions.
The internet is loaded with women showing their hair loss due to alopecia.
So I have a bald patch over here.
Nicole DeWeaver once worked with Jada Pinkett Smith and also deals with hair loss.
I honestly felt like she hugged me when she made that post because it made me feel like I was not alone.
I think it's really courageous that she came out and she's publicized it and she talks about it. And I think it really gives a lot of hope to other women that are out there that may be experiencing something similar to her.
This is my hair loss.
Actress Alyssa Milano recently showed off clumps of hair that came out after she was diagnosed with COVID. As for Jada, she remains upbeat about her ordeal.
Oh, mama's gonna put some rhinestones
So again, immune system related.
in there. I'm just gonna make me a little crown.
So apparently she has tried steroid injections, and we're not talking about anabolic steroids. We're talking about like corticosteroids, like things that are going to be used for reducing inflammatory conditions. So this is where you're probably familiar with things like glucocorticoid receptor modulators, like cortisone and things of this nature. Things that you can dexamethasone, like these are things that can modulate the immune response in a way where you're like suppressing inflammatory activity. So if you are having a effect in your scalp from your immune system flaring up, it's kind of like a weird route to take because you're not actually addressing the root problem, rather you're modulating it at a receptor level. So you're basically manually inhibiting the inflammatory response, but your immune system is still like going fucking haywire. So it's kind of interesting how, to be honest, like the medical system, I don't think is caught up to understand the importance of diet and actual like bodily systemic response to things. Because oftentimes we do see the manifestation of this even in like newborns. One of my closest friends, he has a new baby that is like very, very, very like autoimmune ridden, where he has a lot of like, he has flare-ups on his face where it makes him like scratch his face off literally if they don't put like mitts on him and like, tie him up essentially, because if he is let loose to do whatever he does, like anything he eats essentially causes an autoimmune response where his whole body like flares up red and he starts scratching himself, and your gut is so it's so permeable when you're like a newborn that you are way more prone to, autoimmune issues and whatnot. And again, this is like individual dependent. If you're a soon to be mother and you're pregnant and you crush your gut microbiome with antibiotics and stuff, and you essentially nuke your gut bacteria, like this could essentially have some sort of like pass on effect to your newborn, which then leaves them more prone to, autoimmune conditions, leaky gut. Like their gut microbiome doesn't have the integrity that, somebody who didn't undergo like a bout of heavy antibiotics. Again, we talked about Gordon Ryan too and his stomach issues, and it all came as a manifestation after he had a big exposure to prolonged antibiotic therapy. And he's been dealing with the ramifications of that for years at this point, where he's only in his mid-20s and he's at the top of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. But he had to actually take a break from it because his gut was so fucked up that he like couldn't even eat. He couldn't train without getting like debilitated with pain. And he's been dealing like slowly but surely, like trying to build his gut back up. And it's with the help of people who otherwise are willing to acknowledge that this is actually like an issue from within that can be attenuated and corrected through different manipulations of dietary interventions, reinforcing the integrity of your gut microbiome, etc. But if you just like slam yourself with, corticosteroids and whatnot all the time, you're not exactly addressing the root problem. So, we do see the manifestation of alopecia areata quite commonly in women. Like obviously it's not like every chick deals with this, but it's like relatively prevalent. And I do believe it has something to do with the hormone balance in contrast to men. While you do get afforded improved cardio protection from elevated estrogen, it does seem to make them more prone to autoimmune issues. And with men, not so much, having a more dominant androgen profile. However, we do see it in men too, just not to the same prevalence, at least from what I recall. That statistic may be wrong, but ultimately this is like an autoimmune issue, and that stems from your body essentially dealing with what it deems to be like foreign invaders that it has to essentially destroy to restore your body back to a homeostatic, safe point where there is no like foreign invaders essentially. So with Jada, like I think what she should be doing, instead of like, obviously she's going to get some relief and attenuation of the issue with her, treatments of steroids and whatnot that she's been doing, but that's not really like a chronic thing you can really adhere to, and it's not really sustainable. You can only get away with chronic glucocorticoid receptor agonism for so long, to a point where you're going to have muscle loss, like deterioration of catabolic processes systemically, and a myriad of different things that make it like ultimately it's not addressing the root issue, which ultimately I think for her, like I mentioned, she will get some relief from these treatments. It's not androgenic alopecia. It's not androgen derived. It's not miniaturization of hair follicles. The fortunate thing, at least with alopecia areata, is once you nip this in the bud, if you're able to, with dramatic, dietary changes, lifestyle interventions in some cases, like some people, they live in like a fucking like mold-ridden house. Like there is so much random stuff that could, trigger your immune system in a bad way that you wouldn't even know about. But if she's able to deal with this, like this is not like a permanent miniaturization of hair follicles. Rather, it is a autoimmune attack that should ultimately grow back. Telogen effluvium and actual like shedding of hairs, but not miniaturization of them, causing fibrosis and calcification in the scalp. These are things that you can otherwise get back to a full head of hair with no visible hair loss if you attenuate the immune response. And that is typically done by addressing, like, one of the main things in the first, line of action I would take is like thoroughly addressing the status of her gut health. And that is going to probably involve some sort of elimination diet and addressing with very, very like hyper-specific detail, like what she is ingesting, medications, random fucking drinks, all kinds of food, what's the source of that, what's in them, etc. And very, very restrictively, assessing what can be maintained in that. And it might be, something she has to go down to like a couple fucking things until she attenuates this response or swaps things in and out that kind of, are more gut friendly. And again, this is somewhat of a trial and error process. This is the reason why some people do, the carnivore diet, seen as like a hardcore extremist kind of diet model. It is something that seems to be, well tolerated and like Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, some of these individuals who had pretty bad like leaky gut ended up having like attenuation of those symptoms that they had with the carnivore diet. From what I understand, they're like not really following a like broad spectrum version of it. They're just eating like muscle meat, which is probably not ideal for hitting all nutrient needs, but it's just an example of like a hardcore elimination diet that some people at the hyper extreme of this, like, I don't know, like maybe it's warranted to just explore like how far you can get with elimination principles, because this may be something she ultimately needs to do. Get foods that you can just tolerate at baseline and then build back up by adding one thing in at a time until you're at a balanced diet model again. And you've kind of built the gut back up with, a high level of diversity of, probiotics and whatnot. And getting the, reinforcing the integrity of it essentially, from the ground up. Because if this is like a chronically inflamed state you're in and you chronically are dealing with leaky gut, autoimmune condition, side effects and whatnot, like you're not really going to get anywhere or really know what's moving the needle when you pull things in and out, because you're basically just like chronically dealing with this issue. So that's kind of where you find like some baseline like level of nutrient intake that is satisfactory for meeting physiologic needs, but also doesn't flare your autoimmune disease. And then, you keep going and adding things back in, supporting your gut health with, probiotics, prebiotics, enhancing the diversity of your gut microbiome and whatnot. And yeah, that's, the main thing I would say. The interesting thing about this is the response, when it's a woman versus a man. Like, would a man have gotten the same response if Chris Rock made like a G.I. Joe joke about a guy who's balding? I don't know. That's the interesting thing. Because again, androgenic alopecia is arguably even more sinister than alopecia areata, because although it's not autoimmune driven, it is the miniaturization of hair follicles literally driven from your genetic predispositions to the androgens in your body. So you're basically telling a guy, like, you need to borderline castrate yourself if you want to not experience androgenic alopecia, like, with certainty, if you're super predisposed. Now, again, obviously there are medications that have come out that are like pharmacologically superior in that they kind of like parse out the DHT component, 5-alpha reductase inhibitors being one of the most notable medications to date that are very, very useful in preventing this. But ultimately, like those guys, if you're not willing to like dramatically, I'm not saying DHT inhibition is the same as castration. I'm just saying like the androgens themselves are driving hair loss. And DHT is one of the main components of that, to the point where if you inhibited 5-alpha reductase to the extent that it was inhibited using that medication when you were like adolescent, like you probably would have ended up with a micropenis and a bunch of different shit that comes as a result of DHT inhibition. And you're essentially in a state of like pseudo androgen deficiency. and essentially relying the majority of your testosterone to drive all physiologic functions that are androgen driven. For the most part, like finasteride leaves a residual, 30% systemic DHT, and the amount of total T that is still there is typically enough to support functions to a point where most people are perceivably side effect free, but there are some pretty, debilitating side effects for certain unfortunate individuals who have, less support from testosterone or otherwise need more androgen receptor activation to drive certain processes and whatnot. And it's a bit getting into a sciencey tangent. So if you want to see my finasteride deep dives and androgen kind of pharmacology videos, you can check those out in the hair loss prevention playlist on my channel. But those individuals, they're pretty much fucked if they don't take medicine in order to crush their DHT levels or androgen receptor antagonists that they put on their scalp to then occupy it and prevent androgens from binding, which could, if it gets systemically, crush your testosterone levels internally and your DHT levels and cause low T side effects. Like, you are essentially inducing a state of like semi transition of like male to female in order to prevent hair loss progression. Males cannot prevent this at all. If you're predisposed and you do not address the androgen component, with the DHT mainly being the driver of this, you're pretty much fucked. Whereas for alopecia areata, it's an autoimmune disease that may be manageable, but again, at what extent, like for the androgenic alopecia, would that have gotten highlighted with the same, controversy? It's just kind of interesting because it's just, I guess because it's such a hyper outlier scenario and people otherwise might have been thinking, oh, maybe she has cancer, maybe she has this. And women aren't, supposed to lose hair. So it's kind of a lot more, outlier interest in it is much higher. And people are going to, see it and be like, what the fuck happened, with a much higher likelihood than a male. Because if you see a balding guy, it's like, oh, there's so many, it's like every fucking guy's balding essentially. So I understand that. But at the same time, it's just interesting is that a double standard? Is it not? I don't know. Like, would anyone have cared if it was, Will Smith balding and they're like, hey, starring in the next G.I. Joe film? I don't know. I would have been genuinely interested. Like, I couldn't see somebody like responding in such a volatile way. If he had alopecia areata, perhaps they might have invoked the same response because he can't like control it. But it's just unfortunate because a lot of men do ultimately get ridiculed for this shit. And they can't really control it either, even if it's androgen driven. So like either way you spin it, all I'm saying is the androgen component for men, even though a shit ton deal with it, it fucks with their head very, very much, part of their self-image, to a point where it fucks with their self-esteem, confidence, etc. very, very dramatically. But it's just so common that everyone's just like, oh, whatever, make fun of the balding guy. And for women, obviously it could be an arguably more impactfully negative experience because it's so rare. But ultimately, this is just like a sinister, insidious fucking thing that happens to individuals, and it sucks. You would hope that it's just something you could control easily through some sort of like getting the right diet, the right, lifestyle. And for alopecia areata, maybe that's a more likely scenario, but for androgenic alopecia, it's like, while lifestyle factors and everything can help, like there's really not a lot you can do about the DHT component unless you address it pharmacologically. So anyways, kind of an interesting tangent for me, being, one of the hair loss channels, the main ones on YouTube, I would say. And, Will Smith going fucking rage mode essentially to defend his wife on that one. Was it warranted? Do you think he did the right thing? Do you think he overreacted? Do you think, what's your general thoughts? Interested to hear what you guys have to say. And let me know if you even give a shit about the Oscars anymore. Like, I'm wondering how many people like watch this intently and like really care about what's going on compared to, like, I remember this was like a really big deal years ago, but nowadays, like, personally, I didn't watch it. I just saw this pop up on my recommended, as I'm sure, many of you did. And I'm just genuinely interested. Like, how much interest is there in this shit compared to what there used to be? So, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. Are much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog. MorePlaceMoreDates.com. Follow me on Instagram at MorePlaceMoreDates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My preventative medicine hormone replacement therapy platform, where we connect you with high quality medical providers who understand how to interpret your diagnostics and create an individualized protocol just for you based on your needs, regardless if it involves pharmacology or not, or just lifestyle interventions, dietary manipulations, sleep hygiene changes, etc. We're turnkey and we do it all. And you can also get self-service labs through our company if you want to get cost-efficient, high quality diagnostic lab panels to assess your own blood work. In addition, Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode pre-workout formulas designed from scratch. As well, hair loss prevention products notably related to this video if you're experiencing androgenic alopecia or otherwise just want to proactively get in front of it. This is something I would highly recommend for anybody who is genetically predisposed and doesn't want to lose ground. It is infinitely harder to reverse hair loss than it is to prevent it from happening in the first place. So getting in front of it is one of the main things I'd recommend if this is something you give a shit about. And anything else I'm associated with, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.